Everybody, this is Perch, and I've got a question here. Lapsed comic readers, so people who were very much into comics, loved comics, read them regularly, collected, and then for one reason or another, they got out. And the question is it possible for people to come back in, and what are the circumstances of people coming back in? I think it's a very timely question because there are a number of comic readers, I think, opting out right now. I think that for a variety of reasons, by the way, I think, despite what Twitter says, they're not leaving for all the same reason. There's people who are leaving. I think, yeah, here's an interesting kind of segue, but I think it's related to this, and it's that Marvel for years. Now I'm going back to the '90s, so you'll have to work with me. This is where the Eric Breens can come in and help out a little bit, or people who are collecting comics in the '90s. Marvel had a reputation for being more corporate, more stuffy, more less, more safe. They weren't taking chances. They were pushing a house style. Lot of these kinds of things, and there was a sense at that moment. And I know a number of comic readers, kind of who were big Marvel fans, particularly Marvel, that they started to kind of opt out in the mid '90s, especially if they were Marvel fans who are not into the X-Men. That group seemed to suffer to some extent, and a number of people walked away. And the sales actually reflect this, the numbers that we know they left. And many of them found their way back, but there was this moment where people left. But it was always that Marvel was too corporate. And what's interesting is that when Marvel got beat, well, somewhat, when they got purchased by Disney, those same kind of comments came up again. Oh, it's going to be Mickey Mouse comics. Oh, it's going to be, Disney comics. And Marvel almost seemed to be very worried that was the impression that they were putting off, because they started, they made it really clear that they were not going to do a bunch of Disney crossover things with Marvel. And then it seemed to flip, by the way. I mean, one of the insider kind of things I can say from Disney's standpoint is that it turned out it was more Disney that didn't want to cross over with Marvel than the other way around. So I think Marvel, I mean, particularly now, if you looked at everything that would happen, they would be more than happy to do some variant covers of like Mickey Mouse on the Avengers and Mickey Mouse and the X-Men, that kind of stuff. They'd be more than happy to do that. They haven't, but it's not been Marvel's choice. It's been more Disney. Disney gets very protective of how their IP gets thrown around. But regardless, a lot of people left. And I think Marvel is, once again, as people talk about leaving Marvel, from the shop perspective, and you hear this from a lot of retailers for people who are starting to pull back, the comments seem to be price is too high, books feel stale, meaning the same story is getting told over and over again, and that tends to push people out. Where Marvel is concerned, it's like, does anything matter? Meaning, do these books, like, people want to feel like if they're putting their money in, there's some kind of, not return on investment exactly, but that, they're buying into something that's going to count. And this is one of the dangers of, retcons and reboots and relaunches and all the rest, is that if you start to send the message that the story just doesn't really matter, that if no matter what's going on here, Captain Marvel's in for the fight of her life. Yeah, but if she isn't, and if every comic says that, then at some point you're like, you know what, I'd rather go someplace where the stakes are higher. So anyway, long story short, yes, definitely there's cases of people leaving comics, and I do think we're seeing a certain amount of that, people leaving comics now. Now, some of them are not fully leaving, air quotes, leaving comics. They're going to manga, or they're going to indies, or they're finding comics in other places. But at least how it used to be, and I don't have I'm honest with you, I don't have enough of a pulse on it today to know the actual truth of it. We see what we're hearing from social media, but as we've talked about before, it's a half of a percent. I mean, it's an insignificant amount of customers. What we're seeing is that it's when people leave comics, they don't tend to leave Marvel and then start buying DC. They tend to just leave. They tend to take a break. If you are really committed, if you're a Marvel zombie and you are buying a lot of Marvel titles and Marvel starts to piss you off, it's more likely that you will stop buying comics altogether than decide to go in on DC. It's just that for whatever reason, that's how people tend to behave. Maybe it's different today. Maybe people are doing different things today, but at least in the previous instances, it was kind of just people left. What brought people back was really only one thing, and it's buzz. It's hearing that something dangerous, exciting is going on. So with Marvel, the Ultimate Universe did bring a number of people back, and they found themselves into other comics, and they brought back because it's like, hey, characters are going to die, real things are going to happen. If you miss an issue, it's going to matter. In a weird way, I know I've done these parallels before between comics and professional wrestling, but the same thing is true with pro wrestling as well. Whenever the ratings have dipped, whenever there's been a problem, what's brought people back was buzz around a show of a performer or a match or something is going on that if you don't see it, you're going to miss it. A feeling like if you're missing out by not watching something because it's something more dramatic, higher stakes. Big things are changing. Comics always benefits when it has that feel. A couple bigger moments. I mean, certainly Civil War helped with that, but Brian Michael Bendis's before Civil War, the disassembled story arc in the Avengers had that feeling. He was able to renew it with the Dark Avengers storyline of like, hey, we flipped the script and the heroes are on the run and there's big things are happening. You look at Spider-Man with the introduction of Venom and some of the things going on there. When it feels like major can't miss moments are happening, then people tend to come back. Most people who disconnect from comics don't disconnect from the quote unquote community, which is another reason why I kind of harp on from time to time the news around comics has to get better, because in some cases the news is a good tether. And if the news is its current state of listicles and kind of activist nonsense from CBR and what feels like Newsarama is a pale shadow of what it used to be, and then Bleeding Cool is a trash fire, and it always has been. But if these are the groups that are leading the charge, if we don't have a Wizard magazine, if we don't have a solid newsletter system, if we don't have a good structure for people who are no longer reading the comics but still want to seem connected to it in some way, then that's dangerous. That's a problem. Social media, kind of as we've talked about, is a terrible way to keep people connected. In particular, if you get angry and you nope out of comics, social media becomes a black pill for getting back into it. There's nothing. You do not get the spirit of excitement and enjoyment from comics from Twitter. There's some creators who definitely work very hard to try, and they put their best foot forward, and they talk about everything they're doing, and they make a great attempt. The problem is it just it's drowned out by nonsense, sometimes from the same people. And again, not to go completely sideways on this, but it puts an impossible situation. Social media is built for either customers or fans or creators to deliver hot takes. That's where you get attention. You do not get attention for basic information. You get it for more controversial, edgy takes. And so the temptation to use that platform is too high. You're going to fall into that. And as soon as you do, you're contributing to not, something interesting that's going to pull people back into comics. You're contributing to something that's going to push them away. So again, there's no magic bullet for getting people back into comics if they've lapsed, if they've gone away from it for a while. It's got to be this feeling. You've got to create this perception, this feeling that you're missing something huge, and that can be good marketing. It can be really great stories. It should be kind of both of them coming together. But that's how lapsed comic readers have to be grabbed. They have to you have to give them the impression of, hey, there's a story. It's available right now. You can pick it up, and when you do, you're going to get something you've never seen before. That's what's necessary. Anyway, what about you? Have you ever kind of walked away from comics, and why? And I know some people in the comments below, they've talked about walking away from comics for the reasons of bad creator behavior or politics or those kinds of things. But what I guess I'm looking for more of a, if you've just stopped buying, Are you still paying attention to comics? Are you still reading the news sites? Are you still watching videos? Or are you just out? What would it take for you to come back in? And I want to be specific here because I know some people have said before, well, what would it take for me is for creators to stop putting politics in books. But how would you know that? How would you sense it? Would you be watching videos? I mean, would it? Do you need to see somebody saying, "Hey, good news, we went a month with no politics"? Like, what is help? What pulls you back in? What do you need beyond just kind of? Unfortunately, the no more politics in comics is a bit vague. So what else would it take? What are the real drivers there? What are the specific things that bring you in? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe as always, and thanks for listening.